police and the community. We're all familiar that the men in blue show up when there are crimes that are going down. But increasingly across the country, police departments are doing more to step into their community, to engage with its members, and to have a presence that everybody can see on a regular basis. Allentown Police Department is leading the way in doing just that. And tonight we'll sit down with two officers to hear their stories and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Community policing, it's a term that's taken off in recent times. When we start talking about police forces having a presence in the community beyond simply showing up when there is a crime. But here in the Lehigh Valley, the Allentown Police Department has been leading the way in doing just that for years. Various programs to engage our young people, our senior citizens, communities in every corner of the city, and the success has been overwhelming. We're joined tonight by two officers to talk about those efforts and what they hope we can see in the future. First up tonight is Officer James Stanko, who serves as a community liaison officer with the Allentown Police Department. Officer Stanko, welcome to Face the Issues.
Hello, sir. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. First, before we get started, it has been a crazy, crazy year for everybody with the pandemic, people's health, people's livelihoods. How have you and your family been this last year?
Personally, we've been good. We've been blessed with our health. We have had to make some adjustments. With our family and my personal life and with the police department, just what the different programs that we offer and the different programs we run, we certainly had to change things up a little bit.
And one of the things, the jobs that didn't stop was policing. I mean, our first responders were essential workers, still are. And so I imagine there's a challenge there with doing your job in the middle of a pandemic, being exposed when everyone else is shut down and working from home.
This is something that is really close to my heart because it's kind of a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have to go to work every day and we serve the community and we had that opportunity, but on the flip side, we're doing it during a pandemic. So there is those risks that we could get sick and possibly expose our loved ones and friends and stuff. But on the other hand, we didn't necessarily endure the financial hardships that some of the people have that were unable to go to work. Mm-hmm. So, it really is a double-edged sword with that, but I'm happy that we're starting to move forward and possibly move out of this.
Yeah, you and me both. And I think you just hit on, one of the great challenges that we have when we talk about the virus, that it affected people health-wise, and so many people lost their lives, but it also affected people's livelihoods and those who lost paychecks, those who lost their businesses, and that's even without ever getting the virus, your whole life can be shifted in that. And so like you said, it's a double-edged sword. Officer Stanko, I want to talk about a lot of these different programs. Your title is Community Liaison Officer. Talk to me about what that means and what your job description is.
Well, essentially, I work out of the newly created Community Outreach Unit with the Allentown Police Department. Now, we've always put together different community events and worked with the different community organizations in the city as much as possible. I mean, we really have our arms stretched out, and we really have a lot of great organizations and a lot of great people in the city. Well, what they've done is they've just taken that and they've just kind of beefed it up so that we can do more. Mm-hmm. And essentially, that's what we're going to be doing. As we move forward in 2021, we're going to be taking all the different programs that we have, such as Cop Meets Block and Coffee with a Cop and our Unity games and all that stuff, and we're just going to do them on a larger scale. So I'm looking forward to just moving forward.
One of the great things about the pandemic, hopefully finally starting to pass on, we can get back to some of these programs. I want to ask you about some of these programs. You mentioned a few there: Coffee with a Cop, Cop Meets Block. Let's start with me. Take your pick where you want to start with this, but. What is the idea behind, let's start with Coffee with a Cop. What's the idea behind it? How does it work? How can people be involved with it?
Well, the idea with these different programs is when you meet up with us, mm-hmm. and we spend some time together, you get to know me as a person. Mm-hmm. I'm Jim Stanko first, I'm Officer Stanko second. And that's what we want to project. We want you to see through this uniform, see past this badge, and see that there's a person here that's dedicated to their position that they've been appointed, a person that's dedicated to serving the community that they were, that we're in. And once they see that and they gain our trust, it helps us do our job better. It just it increases our ability to do our job through that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's so important, the idea of seeing people as people before we see them for what they do. And I think you hear that a lot every time there's any kind of situation that goes on the news, the conversation back to, if we engage with each other as people first, and we didn't see each other by their labels, whether they're political labels or, in this case, the fact that you wear a uniform, if we could see people as people, a lot of these issues would resolve themselves. Some of these different programs that you guys do, I'm imagining Coffee with a Cop is literally getting a cup of coffee.
It's actual
with you
coffee
guys.
with a cop.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, does this take place at the police department, at the coffee shop? Is it open to the public? How does that happen?
Basically, either a business or a local business will reach out to us, or we'll reach out to them and ask if they're interested in doing one of these events. And then we advertise it, and generally we get a good crowd there, and we just come out and we talk. You come meet the officers in your district, come meet the officers that serve the community in Allentown, and go from there. We always have a good time with those. I like those.
So it's like a casual, just get some coffee, have a conversation.
Extremely casual.
That's really neat. Okay, so this is not like a presentation kind of thing then. This is just literally just getting to know each other.
Like you and I are sitting here having a conversation now. Same thing. And if you complete transparency. If you have a question, I'll give you an honest answer.
Yeah.
And if I don't know the answer, well, I can find out the answer, and I will reach out to you when I do get the answer to that question and give it to you.
Yeah, open up the conversation, especially in a non-threatening, non-formal way.
Sure.
The other program you guys have is called Cop Meets Block. Now, what is Cop Meets Block? How does that work? And
basically, we will pick one of the parks, and we alternate in the city, and we put together basically a barbecue / basketball game if there's courts there. And again, we advertise it and get some finger painting and fun stuff for the kids to come out and just get that community in that general area. And then we'll just do that throughout the city, when we can. So, if we go to Valentia Park, we're going to have a lot of Center City people coming in. We've done it there before. It was always successful. It was a really good time. And then we have a friendly basketball game with some of the local kids, and that's it. So again, it's the same premise as Coffee with a Cop.
is your basketball game officers versus do you guys play against the kids? Is there like a
in a show of unity? Generally, we mix them up.
Okay.
If they wanted to play us,
Yeah.
we would. We'd probably lose.
that was my next question. What's your record against the neighborhood?
We do a unity game with the high schools for the last 7 years, and I still haven't made a shot. So that's a whole nother thing. I would just stand by that. Basketball is not my game, but I'll give you 100%. I'm very good at running back and forth at the court.
Okay, fair enough. So maybe refereeing the game as a.
I might be able to do that too.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that could be fair. Sure.
Fair enough. So in my other question, when you think of Coffee with a Cop, Cop Meets Block, I mean, how many people usually? Obviously, pandemic, a little bit different. But how many people usually come out for this?
Pre-pandemic?
Yeah.
We'll get over 100 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll get. Listen, you build it, they will come.
That's right. That's
you
right.
put finger paints and balloons and food, and it gets the people out, and then they get to meet us in a great forum. We can have these conversations.
Yeah.
We can have fun, and again, that's another program I really like. Another event. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys also do. You have a life program which is specifically for schools, and I know that's on pause right now with the COVID-19 pandemic and so many downtown schools being shut down or being virtual. And then there's also, you call it the PAL Camp Kids. It's the Youth Summit Camp and PAL's kind of combined.
Yeah.
What is PAL's Camp Kids?
Well, I'll give you a brief description of all of them. The life program was Living with Integrity for Future Excellence. So it was basically a program where we're teaching these kids, they're learning from the mistakes that we may have made. Focus on your education. There's really not that much time in terms of education. If you went to school for 12 years and 4 years to college, it's only 16 years. You live to 100. That's 16 years. That's to last you the next 82 years.
Yeah.
So it's really not that much schooling. So it's about living with integrity, learning from your mistakes, smart decision making, and similar things like that. Now, as far as the PAL Camp Kids program, what we did was, because of COVID, we took our PAL Camp, which is normally 5 weeks. It's fifth graders, 5 weeks. The Officer Geek is the director currently for PAL. So I got with him, and we took a youth academy, where I'm the director of the youth academy, and we put them both together. And we created the PAL Camp Kids, which, again, we love acronyms. It's Community Achievement Mentoring Program.
Okay.
Again,
camp.
Yes, camp. So we started with about 25 kids, and these are kids that we've been working with over the years, like award winners from our previous youth academies and stuff like that. And then we keep adding to it. In other words, you have a core group, and then you'll have these 10 kids that are interested, and we'll put them into the program, and then you might have another 5 or 10 kids interested, and you keep building the program up so that we're all like-minded, and they feed off of each other. So when you have these young adults at this point, because we have 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are still showing up, which is amazing. That is a blessing in of itself. But you have these kids meeting these other young adults. They're kind of feeding off each other, and they're kind of seeing the overall picture, and that's the idea. Because ultimately, the biggest question I ask these kids is, why does your parents, uncles, mothers, brothers, sisters, guardians, roommates, aunts, anybody, why do they want you to do well? And most of the time, they never actually hit the nail on the head. But at the end of the day, this is the answer to that, and this is what we tell them. You are our replacements. We're grooming our replacements. Whether you're a future carpenter, future police officer, future newscaster, we're grooming our replacements.
Yeah.
And that's what the program's designed for.
Yeah. Oh, that's really neat. Are there, you used to said that a lot of these, they start in 5th grade, and a lot of these are 16, 17-year-olds that are still coming. How, are there anyone that stands out to you, or any stories that stand out to you about that journey, and anyone that you guys have really seen just grow over those years?
Frankly, every one of them.
Wow.
These are good kids, and listen, they come from varying backgrounds. And it's not like we went out and selected kids that haven't made any bad decisions. Essentially, the ones that make bad decisions, we want those, because we want them to learn from it. And that's contagious. And when you get that thought process across all these kids' minds, they absorb it, and then they actually start doing it. So every one of those kids is a good kid, and it's a pleasure that I even have the opportunity to be in a position where I can do these things with them. Yes, it is.
Officer Stanko, last question for you. You said at the start that part of a lot of the driving this was the idea of seeing people for who they were, seeing past these labels. You've been doing this for several years now, and looking toward the future, how successful do you think this has been, this endeavor, and what's your hope for where this will take the city in the future?
I've been doing it since 2014. Again, a blessing that I had the opportunity to be in a position with the Allentown Police Department to do that. I think it has a massive impact, because again, it goes back to the thought process. These are our replacements, and not every kid that's in, or young adult at this point, that's in this program wants to be a police officer. Would we love to have them as a police officer? I'm sure the chief will tell you all day long, we'd love to have you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. But at the end of the day, the program is based on success. How do you put the best you out there? And that's the goal.
Put the best you out there.
Be the best you.
Yeah, I love that. Getting people back in touch with their identities and making sure they live that life out to the fullest.
Yes, yeah.
So, Officer Stanko, thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It's certainly our pleasure and privilege, and hopefully have you back for a future episode, or even better, hope we can get out to one of these Coffee with the Cops or one of these programs and kind of get a little bit more engagement publicity for you guys.
We'd love to have you, and it's my pleasure, so thank you.
No, thank you. When we return, we'll be sitting down with one of Officer Stanko's colleagues and talking about what life is like on the patrol and why he chose to become a cop and where he hopes this department and this city will go in the future. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. We're now joined by Officer Carvajal, who serves with the Allentown Police Department. He's joining us to talk about his experience, why he became an officer, and what he sees and hopes for the future of this city. Officer, welcome to Face the Issues. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Sam, for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Let me start the same question I asked Officer Stanko. Crazy year this last year. How are you doing? How's your family doing?
Oh, thank God, everybody in my family is healthy.
Good.
That's the most important thing. Of course, many of my family members, including my girlfriend, had to work from home. So, it was a change for her. Thank God, and I feel like it's a blessing that we were able to be here for our community in this time of need, really, where a lot of other places where they would typically go for help may have possibly been shut down to them, or, they had to call somebody instead of going into an office. Meanwhile, us, we had our patrol station open 24/7. If they had any question, they could come by and speak to us. And it was nice just being able to comfort people in a time that was so stressful for many.
Sure. And as your colleague said, hopeful that we are now walking our way out of this pandemic. I want to ask you, you became an officer. We were talking before the show, unique perspective, unique story. You have a Dominican background. Talk to me about why you chose to become an officer and what that journey was like for you.
All right, well, one of the very important things to me becoming an officer was being able to change the negative perspective that many have towards officers. There's many people that unfortunately, they only deal with an officer maybe once or twice in a lifetime, and those one or two experiences weren't good ones. So, they take that to judge every officer that they come in contact with or encounter. In my personal experience, I had many negative encounters with police officers, not necessarily, it wasn't that the officer was a bad person.
Sure.
Maybe it could have been the situation or just simply a misunderstanding. But I never took that, to have a negative view on any other officers that I dealt with. I always gave every new officer a chance to be able to express to me their professionalism or how concerned they were for, whether it was my safety or my well-being. So that's one of the big, reasons why I dealt with injustices, I feel like. Like I said, it didn't have to be the officer's fault, but I'd like to be that officer that changed that perspective for the ones that could have had a negative, experience or just simply heard from a friend or a family member of a negative experience that they had with an officer, and being able to, shine some positive light, some positivity on it. As I'm sure if you speak with any citizens in Allentown, I try to end every single call I go on, every single experience that I have with one of my citizens or one of my community members here, I try to end up on a positive note. That's what's most important to me.
Yeah. You had made an interesting point here, and obviously I think we always have a saying that the news media has a bent to the dramatic. And so every time there is a negative story involving an officer, that's what we see, right? And it's everybody sees it on social media, on the news. You just had a very interesting perspective. You said you have faced issues before yourself. You have faced issues with officers in the past, and it's inspired you to become one, to change that narrative, to make the change that you wanted, and to get involved and do that. Why is that inspiration for you? And so many people will see something like that and they'll get put off by it, they'll walk away from it, they'll criticize it. What drove you to say, I want to be a part of that solution?
So, like many obstacles that, I have faced in my life, and I'm sure other people have faced, it's not only one-sided. It's not typically just one side that needs to find a solution or one side that needs to work towards that solution to better things. It's, if there's an issue, both sides could be able to assist with a better future. So my perspective to that was, I had so many friends or family members that they never even had an experience with an officer, good or bad. And yet, they were talking down on police. And I told myself, well, what have you done to change, or help in that matter? Have you ever dealt with any officer? No, well, someone told me, and somebody, like you said, with the media, people base their experiences off of what the news has to say or what a friend has to say, not specifically what they went through. And I told myself, well, rather than me just sit back and speak badly of an officer, you know, even if I had a bad experience with an officer, why not maybe I try to do something to better that? You know, the community nowadays, like Officer Stanko was saying earlier, the youth is really struggling with trusting police. You know, whether it's the media that they see it in, social media is so big nowadays, you know, it's not something that their parents have to deal with. So they get influenced so greatly at such a young age that if we're not there, you know, the frontline officers showing them that we're there to help them, then who else is going to be there for them, you know, especially if they're just surrounded by negativity, you know. So I've always been a real positive person, you know, no matter what negative experiences I go through, I tell myself, you have to become a better person regardless of what you're going through in life. You have to try to stay positive, because if you don't stay positive, where else is there to go, you know? So I come into work every day happy, you know, I'm sure my coworkers would tell you that I don't shut up, you know, they're just like, how do you have so much energy? It's 5 a.m. But it's one of those things where I feel like that positive energy I had, you know, just brought me to realize maybe this could help people in another way, you know?
Yeah.
You were saying what drove me. Specifically, I had a corporal in the state police that was an owner of a gym that I was going to. One day, you know, he just comes up to me and he tells me, hey, Abviud, have you ever thought about becoming a police officer? You know, randomly. It wasn't, you know, I never spoke to this issue with him. I never spoke about the matter with him in the past. And I told him, well, no, it never really came to mind. You know, it was always something that I found interesting, you know, a job where you go out there, you're speaking to different people every day. You're not just, you know, stuck in an office. You're out there every day in the community, you know, driving around. And, you know, I asked him, what makes you, you know, speak to me about this matter? He's like, oh, I see how you are around the gym. You're always trying to help people, always talking to people. That's what we need in policing. You know, that's what departments look for. And, you know, thankfully, the chiefs that were here, the whole department decided, you know, to bring me on. You know, I'm glad that they did, and, you know, I'm just here to prove that they made the right choice, you know?
Your positive energy is infectious, and so I can only imagine at 5 a.m, you are their pot of coffee in the morning. Let me ask you this: you are on the patrol. You've got, you know, parts of the city that you every day that you're working. You're there. You're driving. You're walking. What is that like for you? What is that, you know, your everyday like? And talk to me about some of those engagements you have with people.
Oh, well, I love, you know, being on patrol.
Okay.
You know, there's a reason why there's officers that they stay in patrol their entire career. You know, it's what they enjoy doing. There's plenty of specialty units. You know, one like Officer Stanko's on, you know, being in that community outreach unit is amazing because you get to interact with people, not necessarily when you're on calls, but you're going out there and targeting issues that otherwise, you know, if I'm going call to call on a day-to-day basis, you know, I may not be able to sit down and have, you know, that 10, 15-minute talk or longer, you know. So the big thing for me that I love about patrol is, you know, if I'm driving out there, if I get one wave from somebody, you know, that even though I'm always happy, you know, it does brighten my day that much more. Yeah. You know, when I'm driving around, even if I'm going to calls, you know, I'm stopped at a red light, it's nice to see people, you know, waving, you know, I always wave at everybody, you know, ask everybody how they're doing. And it just brightens up my day because, you know, they might have this smug look on their face, and the second you wave at them, it looks like they brighten up their day. You know, they drive away smiling like, oh, hey, that officer, you know, said hi to me. He asked me how I'm doing. And I feel like the big thing is letting people know that it's genuine.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about, oh, we're just trying to improve the image of the department. You know, I like everybody understanding that all of us individually as officers and collectively as a department are here to let people understand that we genuinely care about their issues, that we genuinely care about how they're doing, that, you know, we want to work with them to improve our communities. You know, like Officer Stanko was saying about Coffee with a Cop. You know, I attended it the other day, and it was amazing speaking to people and hearing what they consider the issues in their community, you know, letting them know what I could do to assist them. You know, specifically, it was in the Center City area, so I was able to express to them, you know, whenever I do have time, you know, I get out the car, you know, I speak to people. You know, people are always surprised when they hear me speak Spanish. You know, they're like, oh, I would have never guessed you spoke Spanish. Then we have a full conversation about their background, my childhood, and it's interesting connecting with them on, you know, a level that otherwise, you know, we wouldn't be able to on a call sometimes, you know?
Sure. Yeah, let me ask you about that. I mean, the idea that you just mentioned you're bilingual.
Correct.
And there is so much of the city that is Spanish speaking. I imagine that helps you in your work a lot. What are some of the conversations that you have with them? I mean, is there like when you're, whether it's with Spanish-speaking families and individuals or English-speaking ones, do you find there to be hesitation with the public when it comes to policing, or is there miscommunications? Is there, or when you are out there waving at people and having conversations with people, or if you're Officer Stanko challenging someone to a basketball game, how do you find that reception? Do you find barriers being torn down, and or are people still kind of at a distance?
Well, you asked if it helps, and it definitely does help. It feels great that when you arrive on a call and somebody that may be hesitant at first, I'm advised by an officer that may be already on scene and tells me, oh, hey, brother, could you speak to her in Spanish? She doesn't understand English. And the first couple words in Spanish come out of my mouth, you see this, you hear them with that sigh of relief, and they come to you right away, oh, thank God there's an officer here. Just because of the fact that, it's hard, you come to a country where you don't speak the language. You have these men that, arrive in uniform. Yes, there's a certain presence to arriving on a scene, in uniform. You do have to get control of the situation, make sure everybody's safe, and then you could go about, determining exactly what's going on. And, one of the barriers, like you said, you asked me, what's a barrier that I typically see? A big thing that a lot of members of the Spanish community bring up to my attention is that they were not aware of how policing is done here compared to their country. Like you said, I'm of Dominican descent. I've gone to Dominican Republic, countless times. And something that I've seen myself, in my family's home country is that there is that corruption within police. I myself have dealt with corruption, whether it was officers directly asking me, hey, you got some money to get you out of this situation?
Wow.
So dealing with firsthand and then hearing them when they come here, it's amazing for me able to express to them, listen, you will never deal with something like that here. All these officers here are here to help you. Don't ever feel afraid to give us a call. For them to see that we arrive there and our only intention is to assist them and help them with whatever matter they're in need of, it's just a wonderful thing, and for them to say to me, well, I would have never known if I would have never spoken to you, so it's nice being able to change their minds firsthand, just because of an incident, no matter how simple or how serious it may be, at that moment, that's what the biggest problem in their life is. Yeah. So it's nice being able to be there in their time of need. All the calls that we go on is, they're situations where they felt it to be so serious that they couldn't handle it within their own family and they had to reach out to us. So being able to comfort somebody in a situation like that, that means the world to me.
Oh. I love that genuine spirit that you bring to that. Let me ask you this, officer. You've been a cop for a few years now. You're young. You have your whole future ahead of you. You just talked about how much you enjoy being on patrol. When you look to the future, and with all that you mentioned the negativity earlier, with all the negativity that you see and all the division between, they say between the blue and everyone else, what are your hopes, given what you've seen here in Allentown, the work that you and Officer Stanko do? What's your hope for policing and for the community going forward?
A big hope that I have is that our youth, members of our community, are interested in becoming officers, that they find interest in it. They don't let the negativity, sway them away from possibly becoming police officers. I want everybody to understand that we truly are here to help, that we're people too. We come home to families at the end of the day, every single day, and that hopefully, the issues that the youth see within the relationship between police and themselves, maybe they could come to fully trust us, 100% have trust in us. If they ever have a problem, not fear to give us a call, and just know that we're there for whatever issues or whatever help they need in anything.
Yeah, well, you're certainly doing your part to make that true. So, officer, thank you for your time and for all that you do.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. That is our show for tonight. My thanks to Officer Stanko and Officer Carvajal and the entire Allentown Police Department for the work that they do day in and day out. And of course, thank you to you for tuning in. And we hope you'll join us again right here next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.